The following program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
September 11th, 2001, we arrived here, dark, cold evening, didn't know what we were walking into, but this particular place did become my home for 3.5 days. They canceled classes, so the students at the time were probably really happy. But everybody stepped up to volunteer. So what happened here really changed my life in significant ways. But I would have never expected when I arrived here that my story would be turned into a musical on Broadway, and that there'd be a guy that his name is Kevin, who's on the stage, who's a Tony-nominated actor who better looking, sings, dances, and but I thought we'd start off with the opening song from Come From Away. So if you didn't see it, so you'll get a little taste of what people now in America are seeing, and then this show is just taking off. So it's really fun to be a part of.
On the northeast tip of North America, on an island called Newfoundland, there's an airport. It used to be one of the biggest airports in the world, and next to it is a town called Gander. Welcome to the Rock if you come from away. You probably understand about half of what we say. They say no man's an island, but an island makes a man, especially when one comes from one like Newfoundland. Welcome to the Rock.
Hopefully I'm not going to bore you to tears, just going to read a few sections that are appropriate, especially because I talk about my time here in this building. So as a background, I lived in Austin, Texas. In the show, they have me and my ex-partner Kevin we were from Los Angeles, because there's a pilot who's from Dallas, and then there's a couple that met in Gander while they were stranded, and they ended up falling in love and getting married, and they lived in Houston. So the writer said, there's too many Texans, so we gotta, so they made me from Los Angeles. Fine, whatever, you know. But anyway, in the book here I say, in 2001, my long-term partner Evan and I decided to take a much-needed vacation to Europe. I traveled so much for work that I had enough frequent flyer miles for 2 free round-trip tickets to France in late summer. We had a great time, except Air France lost our luggage for the first 2 days of our trip. We went to the store and bought cheap t-shirts, and we spent our time discovering the south of France, Amsterdam, and Brussels. And on the last day, we took the bullet train from Brussels to Paris, staying the final night at a nice hotel near Charles de Gaulle International Airport. Our flight left early in the morning of September 11, 2001, so we decided to spend a few hours the night before it in Paris with a taxi driver who was serving as our personal tour guide. I had a new Sony Mini DV camera, so I was taking a lot of video throughout our trip. And we drove by most of the major monuments, and getting out of the car, we decided to walk up to some of them, and I narrated as I held my camera. I said, here we are, walking toward the Eiffel Tower on September 10, 2001, I believe. And so late the next morning, we transferred to the airport at Charles de Gaulle. Security at Paris airport was always more attentive than in America, because they had suffered terrorist attacks for many years before 2001. So it didn't bother me to see security officials and guard dogs stopping us over and over, asking us questions. But we would board Air France Flight 004 to fly from Paris into New York, and then go switch to Continental Airlines to fly home to Austin, Texas. Well, Evan's favorite drink was a vodka club soda, and his favorite vodka was called Grey Goose. And on the bottom of the label, it says a product of France. But Evan tried in vain to order a Grey Goose cocktail everywhere we went, but we realized people don't drink vodka in France, they drink wine. And that's we wondered if Grey Goose was truly made in France, but then as we were about to depart in Paris, we stepped into the duty-free shop, and Evan emerged with a big grin because he had 2 bottles of Grey Goose that he carried onto the plane. At the gate, our passports were repeatedly checked, but we were allowed to board. We were sitting in our economy seats. Our flight was normal for several hours, and back then, economy class actually had decent meals on the plane. We were served. I still have, for some reason, I decided to keep I wrote a note on the menu after sitting in the plane, so I was able to go back and write what we had for lunch that day. We had shrimp salad with melon and mint, chicken with poitou-style sauce and rice, rondelle cheese, and chanterelle-style tartlets with wine. And they also served free booze. I'd never seen the movie Shrek, and the airline played that movie on the overhead TV if you purchased a headset. So I bought one and thought it would be a nice 2-hour distraction. Air France 004 was due into Newark Air International around 11 a.m. on September 11th. And of course, the U.S. is roughly west of France, and at some point, as we were traveling, I noticed a sudden drop in our elevation, and then we turned to the right. And so it seemed unusual, and so I looked up at the GPS map, and it looked like we were flying toward the North Pole all of a sudden. Maybe the GPS had gone haywire. And several minutes later, our Air France captain came on the public address system and said something in French. I heard the words terrorist activity in English. I looked up at the GPS screen, and the map is flashing between French and English, and so I noticed that it would say Newfoundland and then Terra Nueva. So I thought instead of terrorism, he was just simply saying Terra Nueva. But I thought, well, that's weird. And then the captain came on the PA in broken English saying, due to a terrorist attack in the United States, we'll be landing in Gander. That's it. And I asked Evan if he had heard what the captain said, but he wasn't paying attention. We were enjoying free drinks. And so we were flying across the Atlantic, having a good time, and it didn't immediately sink in what was happening. We were told to put our tray tables up for landing in Gander, and it was time to sober up. I later found out from a fellow passenger, Sue Riccardelli, who was flying home to New Jersey, that after the announcement, she saw a flight attendant said something to another, and she looked like she might faint. So, I'll skip forward here in the book, but I talk a lot about the hours that we spent on the plane, looking out of my window. I've got a picture of the Lufthansa plane, which was right next door, right, over at Gander Collegiate. So their plane came in. We were the second of the 38 planes. But there's a military officer stationed with a gun, a rifle, at each of the planes, and they sat there for hours. The world changed today for the worst. Our flight from Paris to New York missed an international terrorist disaster in New York and Washington. Hijacked planes crashed into the World Trade Center and Pentagon. We've been sitting on our plane now for 12 hours, 7 on the ground. All we can do is patiently wait for news about the tragedy, for a place to try to talk to our families. We've been told we may have to sleep here on the plane overnight, but we're just fortunate to be alive. Many on the plane cried when we heard the news, but everyone is shell-shocked. No one can imagine what is next regarding our national security. Who can we trust now? Will this heinous crime start a war? All I can do is pray. The driver of our school bus told me, Evan, and the other passengers he was taking us to the college of the North Atlantic. The ride from the airport to the college was less than 15 minutes. However, the driver didn't give any commentary about where we were or information about what to expect. It might have been helpful to know that they had a Walmart, a Subway sandwiches, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Gander was a tiny town, but it was hardly a third world country. After getting off the school bus, we walked through the dark into the community college. It was empty except for the new strangers from Air France and dozens of local volunteers. We were funneled into the cafeteria where they had what we really wanted, TV news. At one end of the cafeteria was a TV tuned to a French-speaking news network. At the other end was a TV turned to CNN in English. And at the college, donations of food and bedding continually poured in all night from individuals. It was like we landed at a free buffet with cod au gratin, fish and cheese casserole, donuts, hot dogs, soft drinks, and more. Salvation Army and the Red Cross did an amazing job that first night. Within an hour of our Air France plane arriving, Salvation Army showed up with a Ziploc bag for each passenger filled with the feminine sanitary napkin, toothbrush, toothpaste, and more. The college had 3 nurses on staff. It was their job to intercept passengers as they checked in to identify whether any refugee had medical needs. And there were a lot of diabetic people and people with high blood pressure. They had their medication in their luggage, but that all had to be left on the plane. So if a passenger had an issue, the nurses went to the local pharmacists who were working around the clock and brought back everything requested. Passengers asked how much they should pay, but they were told it was free. Around midnight, I spotted a teenage boy walking in the front door, carrying a double-sized air mattress and 2 pillows. Knowing an air mattress would be nicer than sleeping on the floor, I ran over to meet him. Until that time, I'd never been in a situation situation in my life where I needed a hand out from a stranger. It wasn't that I couldn't afford a hotel room. There were no rooms. All the hotels were emptied out for the airline crew. Come on in, guys. I had to rely on the kindness of strangers to help me with my basic needs. And it's just like it says in the Bible, for I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, and I was a stranger and you welcomed me. That was happening here from the people in Gander with little encouragement. As the teenager gave me his bedding, a lump of gratitude rose in my throat, and I said, "Thank you." "You betcha," the young man said, his Canadian accent, before turning and walking back out the door. When Evan and I slept, the town of Gander was on the move. Unknown to me, thousands of Gander residents were working to help us. Many, including Mayor Claude Elliott, would not sleep for several days. At times, it seemed like all 10,000 men, women, and children in town were volunteering in some capacity. Retail clerks and pharmacists worked around the clock. The high school media teacher and part-time Rogers TV reporter Brian Mosier logged 27 straight hours helping passengers by cooking breakfast at Gander Collegiate, the local high school. Just as he was trying to go to bed at 9 a.m. on September 12th, the TV station called. They said, "We need you to get on the air immediately," and he played a key role in conveying to the locals what the needs were at the different shelters. Brian was amazed how quickly people responded to the specific requests for food, toiletries, and clothing. And he worked 3 live shows per day for the next 4 days, running back and forth between the school and the TV station. He said sleep was basically short cat naps, and there weren't many of those. Telephone company workers set up temporary phone banks, and everyone with a kitchen started cooking. After Gander was filled to capacity with refugees, even smaller towns nearby like Gambo, Lewisport, and Appleton, they also stepped up to help. Local bus drivers who were on strike left the picket lines to help transport passengers to Gander and to 30 miles or more during the emergency. Ron volunteered at Gander Collegiate. They asked him to arrive at 4 a.m., since the first plane had only been deplaning in the middle of the night. When he arrived, there were some other men there from the Lions Club, and they asked him to help scrub the floors so everything would be clean when the plane people arrived. Next, they asked him to help make breakfast. Ron's job was to make toast. And classes at the college were canceled until further notice, so he didn't have to worry about sleeping late on the floor, while students arrived for a class. Sue was working at Gander Credit Union that same day. She remembers how a come-from-away Irish couple came in for a currency exchange. They'd saved up their money to take a large group of kids to Disney World. Their shelter was the Salvation Army camp about 30 minutes away from Gander, and they were told the kids weren't disappointed at all by being diverted to Newfoundland instead of Florida. In fact, they were having fun. The kids saw a bear, and they thought they really were visiting Disney World. Back at the college North Atlantic, I was getting up as the sun rose, brightening the classroom. The rest of the passengers awoke, but Evan kept on sleeping. He was snoring. His snores were so loud I laughed. I think he annoyed everyone in the classroom, but thankfully classes were canceled so he could just sleep on for a few more hours. When he finally got up, we knew we needed some supplies. So after spending all day in our clothes on the plane, plus sleeping in them, we were desperate for a change of underwear and a socks at a minimum. So we asked where we could go. We were told there's a Walmart about 3 miles away. It was a beautiful day, so Evan and I decided to walk there. But we didn't make it more than 25 yards down the road when a car pulled up next to us and rolled down the window. "Where do you want to go?" the driver asked. We explained we needed clothes from Walmart. "Hop in." So we did. The driver dropped us off, refusing money, and it was my first experience as a hitchhiker. Inside the Walmart were hundreds of stranded passengers, and when we arrived at the men's underwear aisle, several men, including some elderly ones, stared at the emptied-out shelves as if they couldn't believe that the underwear was so important. The standard-size issue white tighty-whities were gone, except for odd sizes. All that remained were bikini briefs and boxer shorts. So Evan and I quickly grabbed some boxers and a package of white T-shirts and tube socks. After we checked out, we started walking back to the college, and once again, a stranger stopped their car and asked where they could take us. Everyone we came across was friendly and sympathetic about what had happened in America. The College North Atlantic was a fantastic facility to be stranded in. Aside from having many classrooms that had been converted to sleeping rooms, the college had working phones. They were made available so every passenger could call their families from around the world as often as they'd like, at no charge, even though the bill to the college would total thousands of dollars. The college also had a computer lab, which is still there, people would use to send email to their loved ones to read up on the news. But best of all, there was a culinary institute at the college, and on the second night, they whipped up 200 stuffed chicken breasts that were better tasting than any restaurant we had on our European vacation. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward now. So we were here for 3 days. It was kind of chaotic where there was one time they said, okay, your plane's ready, get ready to go, pack up. And then all of a sudden, we call it the false alarm. There was the U.S. airspace was not really open, and there were other problems at the airport with so many planes crammed in there they were starting to break down. So anyway, part of the book also details, which is not in the musical, is that because we were on Air France, and then finally when they got to the plane, when we got to the airport, we checked in for a flight to New York. And then when we got through security, they said, "Oh, we're not going to New York. Air France wants their plane back. So we're going back to Paris." And at the time, we thought there could be a war breaking out at any moment. And so we didn't really want to go. In fact, I got on the phone, I called my mother, and she cried, don't go, figure out a way to go across Newfoundland, to go across the ferry, to get on a bus, to get on a train. It would have taken like 2 days to get to the U.S. border, but I actually had staff members in my Austin, Texas advertising agency that volunteered to drive another 2.5, 3 days to the Maine Canadian border to pick me up. Ultimately, we went back to Paris, stuck with the airline, because if you didn't, they were going to blow up your luggage because they weren't sure there might be bombs. So I had just purchased a bunch of gifts for all my nephews and nieces, and I thought, I want my stuff. And so anyway, long story short, we went back, 2 terrible days in Paris, including how I had to steal food off of other people's plates because there was no food in the restaurant. But you can read about that in the book. But we finally arrived home. Our journey took us 7 days to get home back to Austin, Texas. So a year goes by. It's the 9/11 anniversary, and many passengers, many come from a ways, return back to Gander for the anniversary to say thank you. In chapter 6, 1 year later, when we left Gander, the volunteers said our gratitude was enough and repayment for the food and the phone calls wasn't necessary. Their generosity provided a beautiful example how little things can really make a big difference. Like many people, I was changed by 9/11. However, I didn't succumb to the fear of new terrorist attacks because people of the blessing I witnessed in Gander. My religious faith was rekindled as a result of the experience. I soon started attending weekly Mass at my Catholic church, and even though I moved further away, I decided to stick with the University Catholic Center, my parish home that had helped me during my time of need in the 1990s. On the first anniversary of the tax in 2002, I wanted to go back to Gander, as some come from ways did, but the cost and time for me to travel from Austin to Gander would have been greater than a round-trip airfare to Paris. So I wanted to do something to offer my gratitude, but what? Sitting at my office desk, an idea hit me. I had borrowed an idea from the book and the movie Pay It Forward by Katherine and Hyde. This touching fictional work demonstrated how a young boy could start a movement that promoted kindness to strangers, and I wondered if there was a way we could take that concept to demonstrate my gratitude to Gander. The country, America, was still anxious and angry about what happened on 9/11, but perhaps we could give people some hope. As a co-owner of a small business with 25 employees, I decided by mandating participation by the staff in doing good deeds to strangers. We would make it fun by breaking the staff into teams of 2 and giving each team a $100 bill. These teams could go and then use the $100 for any act of kindness to strangers. Unsure the staff would go along with this, I ran the idea by a couple of longtime employees. They wholeheartedly approved. The staff vividly remembered being at the office on 9/11 and having the added stress of making sure their boss was safe. So we closed our office the morning of September 11, 2002 to allow time for the teams to do their work. Staff members were instructed to anonymously perform random acts of kindness. But they were also told to explain the story of what happened to their boss in Gander on 9/11. At the end of the day, we gathered in our conference room and each team explained what they had done with their money. People got teary-eyed as they talked about amazing reactions they'd received when they did small things like buying a cup of coffee or giving away bus passes to a stranger. There was something magical when they made their one-on-one connection, just as I'd experienced when the teenager gave me the air mattress and pillows on 9/11 in Gander. Another year later, the word got out that the Austin American-Statesman, our local newspaper, someone had forwarded my email that we were doing this again for the second time in 2003. So she wrote an article which appeared on the front page, writing, "One team gave $100 to the founder of Comfort House, which provides food, daycare, and emotional support to children in a low-income neighborhood. Spend it on yourself," they told her. She didn't. She spent it on the Comfort House food bank, buying enough supplies to feed 50 seniors for a month. She said, "It did so much for us. I figured angels just gave me a gift." The reporter tracked down Gander Mayor Claude Elliott for the story. He said of the Gander 9/11 response, "We did the only thing we know how to do, which was to comfort them, console them, and show them some love." That newspaper article blew my company's anonymous cover for Pay It Forward. I received an emotional voicemail on my office phone that day that really still chokes me up. The caller said, "Hello, Kevin. You don't know me. My name is Vincent. I just wanted to thank you. This morning I had a flat tire. I took it to get it fixed, and one of your employees paid for it." At first, I was kind of puzzled about the whole thing until just now at 3 o'clock. I'm reading the front page of the newspaper. The article starts out, "Something special could happen to you today," and it did. I had no idea that any of this had occurred to anybody in Austin, but I want to thank you very much. It was very heartfelt. What you're doing is very kind, and you really made a difference in my life. I just wanted to thank you. That difference costs exactly $7. 7 others with flat tires received the same service for free that day. I got choked up listening to the voicemail. And I thought maybe this is an example of what we read in the Bible of Luke's Gospel, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." I told the reporter in the article, everybody's lives are so frantic and busy. Often it takes a jump start to remind us the importance of being kind to strangers. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to make an impact. I never expected my story of being a 9/11 refugee that so many and the stories of many others who had similar experiences would ultimately be told in the Broadway musical Come From Away, or that a younger, better-looking, and immensely talented Tony-nominated actor should play me on stage. On the 10th anniversary of the attacks, David, Hyde, and Irene Sankoff, the husband and wife team from Toronto, who wrote the book, lyrics, and music of Come From Away, interviewed me about my experiences in Gander. We met at the College of the North Atlantic on my first trip back to my 9/11 shelter. They interviewed me several times over the next year via Skype. Then in 2013, I traveled to Sheridan College in Ontario to see the first version of the show. And although the show blew me away, I assumed the musical would end with the college production. Instead, it was a snowball that gathered speed and support along the way. Performances in San Diego, Seattle, Washington, D.C., and then back last October, they let me come back where we performed here in Gander, and then Toronto. But in 2017, just last week, it debuted at the Schoenfeld Theater on Broadway in New York City. And I'll insert, this is breaking news of that it didn't make the book. But what was unbelievable was, so there are 12 characters, and they each of them play someone who's from Gander as well as someone who is a passenger on a plane. But all the people, the real characters who are portrayed, were there for the first time. And at the end of the debut, they invited us to go on stage with our character. And so they forced us we had to run outside into the freezing cold, around a door, backstage, and the next thing you know, we're on stage. You have to look for your doppelganger, find them, and then line up, and then the crowd is cheering, and we go out on stage, and they tell us we're supposed to take a bow. I'm like, why am I taking? I didn't do anything. I didn't sing or dance, and these. But it was, so I can tell people I have been on a Broadway stage and for a standing ovation in a grand finale. And why did I write the book? And so I had been following the show, and I kept hearing that people that they left, they wanted to know more. They just they'd never heard about this story. They were just blown away by it. They wanted more information. And there was this other book, what's it called? The Day the World Came to Town, back in 2002, and but there really wasn't anybody who had done a first-person book, and so I decided, actually, because I just had a change in careers, and I had the time, and I knew that there was Broadway opening in March. Back in September, I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to have it ready and have it for sale in the theater. And so I did. Well, thank you guys for being here and listening to my story, and I appreciate all that you do.